This is Smithy.tv.
This is cast this in the
new
Smithy
space
TV studio.
Yes, I'm James Scott.
I'm Ryan Goldhar.
There's the camera. I got to get used to the.
With us today
here.
is Raoul Bhaneja.
Raoul Bhaneja.
Hi, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Look at James, because then you can see your face.
Hey.
You can look at me too, but then I'll switch cameras.
I see, so that's kind of a good one.
Yeah, that's the good one. Like, play to the camera.
James, Ryan, you know, what I've always wanted to tell you both is that I am very interested in... No, fair enough.
Where's the camera on you, Ryan? Is it attached to the computer there?
I've got here.
Oh, monitor vision.
A monitor cam.
Okay.
Nice.
Because this one up here.
Oh, there's that one too.
This one above, which is off aim and only has half of Raoul's face. There we go. Look at that. Pose.
It's too bad that you can't rotate that camera from back.
It's coming. I'm sure
Get it
before
down the
long.
road.
this
Oh,
is
yeah,
gonna
is it?
go by. These
Okay.
guys, you guys,
Yeah.
come on, look at
Well,
this.
I mean, like here. I'm gonna leave the camera on James for a second. I'm gonna actually fix this so it looks nicer. And there we go. So when I cut back in 3, 2, there's both of you are in the shot.
Amazing.
You get a nice above the shot. Look at that. And
This has more cameras than I think any Canadian production I've ever.
I believe it.
welcome,
Yeah, I believe it
welcome to
does.
Smithy TV. The internet is out there and it's cheap.
Yeah. Is that the mono for this network? Because that's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome.
The internet is out there and it's cheap.
It is cheap, exactly.
Yeah, I love it.
So, I mean, welcome. This is sort of, this is the first show that we've done in this studio.
So there is a certain historical aspect.
This is sort of like
to this.
episode 1 of season 2. You're our season premiere.
Well, I'm happy because somewhere in season 1 I was trying to get on this show, like I try to get on most Canadian shows, and it didn't happen. So I'm glad.
I don't know.
it's finally come true.
You've had some pretty. You've got a pretty good record for the shows that you're on. Like,
Well, I've been on a number of shows, but this one was on my list for a while. I was starting to feel a little bit like, what? I'm not young enough. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not experienced enough. I mean, what is it going to take?
Well,
what am I going to have to do?
I think we wanted to make it as special a reason as possible. I think a season premiere is pretty good.
I'm thrilled.
And think of it, it's been over a year since James and I have actually recorded an episode.
Well, then, so that it has been a long time because I was.
Not only is it the season premiere, it's also the reunion show. So I think that both
We're
those
older
factors.
and wiser. And
Older and wiser.
just older.
Yeah.
This is great. I take
A little
everything back.
stupider.
I'm totally honored to be here in every aspect. Then.
I've got to ask you, Raoul is one of Canada's premier English language working actors.
Yeah, move the mic out of the way. Look it right down like you've got your chin.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, there you go. Look at that.
Hold
You're
on.
breathing again.
Is
Look,
it-
I
can you
see
still
your
hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Oh, nice.
Can the
This way I
audience
can
hear
sit
you?
up.
Whole other story.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So, Raoul, before I left my former place of employment, I was walking along the street and I saw you zip by in an incredibly expensive car. Was that your car, or were you acting at the time?
Didn't I roll down the window and go, "It's a rental"? I think you did kind of like the whoa. Things are looking up for a guy who's not a regular on a TV show currently. Whoa! And
I think you had to circle the block to come back into the shot again, right? Isn't that what you need to have?
I think I had a rental. I until this is a true sign of Canadian success as an actor.
Yes.
Until my parents gave me their car this year, I had never owned a car, but I'd spent many years renting cars. So I would occasionally be seen showing up to auditions or buzzing around town, and people would just be like, "Wow, man, who would have known he's got so much money that he'd buy a brand new Ford Taurus?" Like, wow.
So this is an as-needed thing. You've just never needed a car, but until you needed one.
Yeah, well, and also, like, I was convinced that it was better to rent than to own for a long, long time. And then when my parents gave me their car out of pity, their 10-year-old Honda Civic, I was like, no, now it's good to own a car. So, but also, I was kind of in the world of like, hey man, we live in Toronto, man, we don't need no cars, y'all. And then I found that when I had 2 kids, and being in and out of town, and my wife, who's also an actor, being on her own, I was like, okay, we need a vehicle. So, but it's hilarious because, of course, in other centers like Los Angeles, if you were an actor who didn't have a car, you wouldn't be an actor.
That's true.
Because you can't actually go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, I drove here today, just so everyone knows.
Well,
In the Honda Civic?
Yes.
is it
not in
now
the
11
rental.
years old, or is it still 10 years old?
It's actually going to be officially 10 next month.
Oh, very nice. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
How many kilometers have we got on that?
We're closing on 200.
Nice.
But my parents have
Yeah,
babied it. My parents have babied it. So
They're in Ottawa, right?
yeah.
Yeah, you grew up in Ottawa?
I did, yes.
Born in England.
Born in Manchester, England, when my dad was doing his PhD there, and then I moved back to Ottawa when I was about 1.
Mm-hmm.
Then I lived in Ottawa and went to elementary school there. Then for 4 years I went to an elementary school in Bonn, Germany, when it was still West Germany during the Cold War,
Quite.
which is an indicator of how old I am. I lived in Germany
Beethoven's
during the Cold
birthplace.
War. Beethoven's birthplace.
Yeah, Bonn,
indeed.
Germany,
Yeah, they have
sure.
a beautiful statue of him, and they're very
Yeah.
into their Beethoven.
Yeah, they should be.
And then I moved back to Ottawa in the late 80s, and I ended up eventually, after that, going to high school. I went to Canterbury High School, the arts
It's an art school,
in Ottawa. Yeah, and then after that, as soon as that ended, I went to the National Theatre School. And then when I finished at the National Theatre School in Montreal, I came to Toronto because that was the place for me to be.
What came first, though, in terms of the arts, music or acting? I know that Raoul was also a very accomplished musician, particularly in the blues genre. And what's happening here? Oh, chin and beard. What came first? What was your in terms of passion? There.
It's funny, my whole life I've been interested in both. Probably since both around the time I was like, 11, 12 years old, I started to get into both things and interested in both aspects. And really, for a long time, I struggled with do I need to be one or the other? Like, will people take me seriously if I'm an actor who's a musician? Will people take me seriously if I'm a musician or primarily and then do acting? So at some point I realized I couldn't really win. So I decided that I'm sort of both at the same time, and I sort of always have been. The times when I've tried to do just one, I kind of get unhappy because I miss the other thing. If I'm in a period where, for a long time I was only doing music, I'd want to act again, and I'd need to act again. And vice versa, if I was on a TV show and the hours were crazy and, months went by, or 9-10 months went by and I only could do a show or two, I was never that happy.
And what were your inspirations in both fields?
Inspiration.
Like, why the blues? Why?
Yeah, well, I guess I always loved being. When people ask me what I am, and if you got to fill out some form, like for your taxes or for your work, anything you have to say what kind of work you do, I always say that I'm a performer. I don't really say I'm an actor or musician because they don't cover enough. So I think I've always been a performer. I've always loved being in front of an audience. I've always loved the live experience of working with other actors and other musicians and playing in front of people. I've just always loved that. So, the TV and film end of things came much later in a way because I didn't have much experience doing that in my early days, really until, I'd finished theater school and moved to Toronto. I'd never really done a lot of stuff on camera. So...
well, the opportunities aren't necessarily in Ottawa, right? Doing theater is one thing because they have a great center there, and with the NAC,
and for me, I got my start at the Ottawa Little Theatre, which is 100 years old this year.
Wow.
So there's been an amateur theatre in Ottawa for 100 years. There's not many things in Canada that have been around for 100 years, so that was a really cool place where I had this opportunity as a kid to be like 15 and like you show up and you got your dressing room and the Ottawa Little Theatre has better facilities than most of the professional theatres in Toronto. So
you couldn't find yourself on You Can't Do This on television? What?
Well, no, I never. A bunch of my friends were on You Can't Do That, and and have done great, whether it be superstars like Alanis Morissette, my friend Vic Sahai,
Or Adam Reed was on.
Adam Reed, like people have done. But yeah,
Did you get to work with Les Lie at all?
I have a feeling like Bill Luxton and Les Lie. I have a feeling like I met one of them once. I'm a bit more of a Billy Van.
Yeah,
fan.
sure.
Billy Van is kind of my guy. But
Did you get to work with him?
No, God, no. But those guys were cool, man. It was like this sort of like vaudeville on television thing, if you think about it.
No, it is from that tradition, for sure.
But they really were incredibly funny and had there was a sophistication to all that stuff they did that was just so good. I mean, I'm crazy about the hilarious House of Frightenstein. Oh man, I love that show. I love all that stuff. And so, yeah, but as a kid, there wasn't, in Ottawa, you basically would do bilingual industrial videos, or you can't do that on television. Yeah. And there were very few other opportunities. And at that time, late 80s, early 90s, the scene in Montreal in terms of the TV and film world was just kind of starting to stir up. It was but it was still kind of
the
like...
The English-speaking side, at least.
Yeah. Denny Arcand and all those guys have been making movies, and there have been French television and everything, but, like American production shooting in Montreal or whatever, it was still really in its kind of infancy. So I auditioned for a movie when I was at the end of high school, which I ended up getting, which was this film called Quadra, which was with Jean-Claude Lord, a Quebec filmmaker. And it was opposite a very young, super new actor by the name of Matthew Lillard. So I was supposed to do this movie with Matthew Lillard, but they said, you can't go to theater school if you do it. And I thought about it, and some of my friends said, take the movie, man, you'll learn on set, you can't turn down a movie. And then other people said, are you crazy? You got into the National Theatre School. It's a hard school to get into. Just because you don't go the first year and say, I'm going to do a movie, but I'd love to come back, doesn't mean you're going to get in the next year. It all depends on the graduates. So I ended up deciding to not do the film and go to theatre school. And then, of course, the film never happened. It got canceled and never happened. And I was like, yes, that should have been lesson number one about the TV business and the film business. But so it's something I always wanted to do. And the on-camera stuff came basically when I came to Toronto.
And then how about the harmonica and the guitar?
Yeah, my brother always played guitar. And so I wanted to learn guitar to be like my brother. And I took lessons in Germany and studied classical guitar a little bit. But at some point, foolishly, I was like, I don't want to learn all this Bach stuff, man. How do I play Beatles tunes? And the guy was like, okay, I'll show you.
All right, this is how we show you how to play the Beatles tunes. Yes.
His name was Gunter. My guitar teacher was Gunter. And it was, and that was kind of the end of being a great guitar player, because I'd sort of left classical guitar behind, and I was never that good at it. And then right around the same time, there were I had a geography teacher and her husband who lived right across the street from our house in Germany. They lived in a condo across the street, and they were really cool people, and I used to hang out with them and stuff. And her husband, Tim Guest, was this guy who had every kind of instrument. He had like a bongo and a nylon string guitar and a tin whistle and a pan flute, and he loved music, but he was a total amateur musician, right? But so one day...
He's a collector.
Yeah, and he was, he was like a jack of all trades kind of guy. He loved all of it, but he was a former British Army captain, so he wasn't like a guy who was like spent his life playing in bars or whatever. But he had this little black Hohner harmonica, Hohner Pro harmonica, Special 20. I think it may be Special 20.
Is that a chromatic harmonica?
No, it's a
with
diatonic one. It's a little black one, and he had one in the key of E, which I should have known was a sign that he didn't know what he was doing, because that's a very high key on the harmonica. But people go, I'm going to play a blues in E, I'll have an E harmonica, but that's not how
they don't correlate like that.
No,
do they?
You have to play in cross position. Anyways, that's for the harmonica episode of TV Smithy's show. But anyways,
stay tuned next week.
We're
going to all harmonica all the time.
Blow one, draw three, bend. So it's extremely.
I'm going to look up what those mean, and we'll put it across the bottom.
Terribly
of the screen
boring.
I don't have any harmonicas, thank you.
So no, that's good. And so he gave me one, and then I just immediately loved playing it. And the thing I used to do is I used to walk to school I had a few parts of my school journey that were kind of long, like a big long walk to a bus stop, and then you get off a bus and a really long walk to school. So, and they were fairly solitary. So, as a kid in Germany, I used to walk down the street and play harmonica. You know, that's kind of how I started to learn how to play. So that all started at the same time. You know, I was doing school assemblies there and sort of dressing up and pretending to be different people. And I used to do this Louis Armstrong impersonation thing and all that weird kind of stuff. So, so yeah, that's kind of how I started, really, like as a kid.
Terrific.
The end. Thanks for coming out today.
Sometimes I just have to stop talking because I won't stop. You'll never ask me a question. I'll talk and it'll be like 4 hours from now and you'll be like, so.
What was your first gig in the film and TV biz?
Like, do you remember? I mean, so obviously there was the first audition that you booked that you didn't take.
And then they never made. But in terms of what's
well, I did too. The very first thing I did was speaking of industrial videos. When I was in grade 9, I got cast to play a native kid in a video that was for the Department of Indian Affairs, which was basically like it was called Sniff and Huff. And this guy Jeff Baer was the producer and writer of it. And it was basically like, "Hey kids, let's not do drugs." Now, of course, it's totally wrong that like a half South Asian kid got cast as a native kid. But it was really cool because we went to go shoot the second part of it like a year later, and I got to we shot it on the Ganawagi Reserve, and it was like a month before the Oka crisis.
Timing is everything.
Yeah, no, I was there, and there was one of the kids who was shooting it with me. His dad was like a Mohawk, but he wasn't one for the warrior guys. And I was in the back room of this place just kind of chilling out and like reading motorcycle magazines in this cottage. And it turned out the whole time we were shooting it, this whole group from the Warrior Society showed up and threatened to like kill the guy. And he like got in a car and took off, and I just been in the back like flipping. And these guys from the Warrior Society came. They had like field radios. I mean, this was like the tensions inside the community were really intense. And so there was this big sort of showdown, and I never saw any of it. But so I had that experience, which was really cool. But that was like a government industrial video that I don't know if it ever actually, like, I don't know who's ever seen it. I think I have a copy of half of it somewhere. But that was cool.
I still use it on my demo reel.
Yeah, it was cool because, you know, like you got to play kind of a dramatic thing, and you know, and it was all like kids sitting around in the basement going, "Hey man, you don't need to do drugs." "Yeah, sometimes I do. I feel lonely." You know, it was kind of one of those things. But yeah, I was probably like 15 when I did that, and I thought that was really neat. And then I got this Quadra movie when I was like 18 or 19, and I didn't do that. But the next job I got was, you know, if you're now a theater student in Ontario, and in some parts of Quebec, you can come do this thing called the Theatre Ontario Audition Showcase. Right. Where actors from all these graduating programs come down and audition for directors and casting directors. And I mean, it can be...
I've been there.
Yeah.
It's a fun 2-day event.
Yeah, it's like torture for the people doing it because there's all this massive pressure on like, oh my God, I hope someone loves my 2-minute audition and they hire me. And then there's all this... and then unfortunately, as the audience members, they come and they have to sit through 2 days of people doing monologues or them doing group presentations. Like it can be a real... challenging.
Yeah, every school is separated.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, it'll start with like Humber, and it'll go on to Sheridan, it'll go on to Windsor, and then it'll go on to National Theatre School, and then.
And don't people crash it as well?
Those you can't really crash because you got to be part of a school to get into them. I mean, I'm sure somebody's tried to crash.
Yeah, you can't crash the audition because everything is properly in play. Everyone is scheduled a certain amount of time. At the beginning of the day, everyone who's in the audience, whether they're agents or casting or whatever, they'll get a booklet and they'll know, and they'll outside they'll have booklets of everyone's headshots.
But so it's a real and so anyways, we went down from NTS to do it, and this was probably in its first or second year, like it was just starting. Yeah. So I came down and I did my audition pieces, and in those days it was terrible. They hadn't quite figured out how to do it, so you'd all just stand around at the end and hope that someone would come up to you. And of course, one of my classmates, like 3 agents, came up. "Love to talk to you, darling. You know, here's my card. Love to be in touch." And the rest of us, and I just sat there. No agent came up to me, and I was like, "Wow, this is a terrible way to start my career. This is going to be a disaster. I'm coming into the profession in like 2 months. None of these people want me." And then this woman came up and said, "Yeah, hey, here's my card. My name's Robin Cook. I'm doing casting at CBC. I'm doing this show called The Newsroom, and I need somebody to play Pamela Sinna's brother. And Pam had been a graduate from the National Theatre School, probably 5 years before me, something like she'd been there in the last 5 years. And she said, yeah, would you mind putting yourself on tape? And the thing at that time was that like hardly anybody you couldn't really leave school to do work. NTS was like, no. But the year before, another Ottawa gal, Sandra Oh, someone you may be familiar with, Sandra Oh, towards the end of her school year, had got the Diary of Evelyn Lau, which if you think about now, like if Sandra Oh hadn't been allowed to do the Diary of Evelyn Lau, I mean, her career may have been entirely different.
Sure.
Because it was like for a young Asian woman, I mean, we're talking 1993, right? There weren't a lot of roles for young Asian women. A young Asian woman, dramatic leading role on a major CBC TV movie. So I had the advantage of that, the odd person been let to go do a play, but it had to be at the very end of the year. So I did the audition on VHS. A couple buddies from my class helped me. It was terrible. I sent it down. And they said, yeah, we'd like you to do it. And it's, it's 2 days, but it was in February. So I went into the director, Perry Schneiderman's office, and I said, listen, they want me to do this thing, and can I go do it? And the only reason, I didn't seek this out, the only reason I got this job is because I went to the audition showcase for our school setup. And he kind of went, well, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, just like don't be gone for long. So I came to Toronto for 2 days. I show up to CBC, one of those floors. It was the new building then, right? I come in, they bring me inside, and they go, okay, listen, you're about to go downstairs and get fitted and shoot the newsroom. The thing is, that show's really different. Like, they don't stick to the script. Like, they improvise. And you could see everyone there going like, yeah. And I sort of thought, oh, improvise, cool. I'd done improv in high school, and I thought, wow, that should be a good thing, So I go down, I do my first scene where I just walk in an extra, and then I have a scene, it's like me, Pam, and Ken Finkelman, right? So I'm like, I do my first take, and of course Ken Finkelman has written it and is directing it. So I come out, do my scene, and then he looks at me and he goes, okay, that was good. More street. Okay, roll cameras. And I'm immediately in that second, I'm like, okay, what did he say? He said, more street. And then just in that flash of a second, I was like, okay, no one has ever given me the direction more street. I don't remember any class at the National Theatre School about how to act more street. Like, I just didn't know what it meant. But, quickly you went, okay, street, relaxed. You must have seen me go like, street. And it's like, relax, lay back, throw it away, or whatever. So then I did it, and really that was the beginning. That was February 1996. And I was, 20, 21 or something. So that's really kind of where it all started.
And it's not like this long career of auditioning and getting there. It was like you lucked into.
Yes.
I mean, you had the audition. You were auditioning for everybody with the Theatre Ontario program, but you had no idea that this was just something you were going to land. And
that was the total thing about this business, which is so weird, is that, like, she was sitting in the audience going, I need, like, someone who's, like, 20 who could look like her brother.
Right.
And there's a couple people in town, but they're too old and not quite right. And it'd be kind of fun to find somebody new. And there he is. Okay, good. Done. Now
That's
she's
great.
on to her next thing. But it's so random, right? Like, I didn't get an agent out of that whole thing, but I got a job.
And because you were in the newsroom, did you get an agent out of that experience?
Well, what happens is I did the newsroom, and then right after school ended, I did a show at the Blythe Festival that was directed by the legendary Canadian theatre director Paul Thompson, whose daughter Severn had been in my class at theatre school. So Paul had hired me to do this play, and so I went, and they used to make fun of me at Blythe because they'd sent out all our resumes to all the people, and I never heard anything. So at Blythe, they used to make fun of me because whenever I wasn't rehearsing or improvising our show or writing it, I'd always be in the office, like huddled around like a Macintosh Classic, this old Mac, and I'd be writing letters. And I had I wrote letters to like every agent I could think of. I wrote letters like, please come see my show, and I want an agent. And Edna, from Edna Talent Management, Edna came up to see my show, like drove 3 hours out to Blythe, watched it.
Because of the letter you wrote?
And then she came back, and I'd been bugging Angela Wright at that agency to meet me. And she came back and said, yeah, hey, this kid's pretty good. He can sing, and he plays guitar, and he's good. You should meet him. And I met her. So between having this job at the Blythe Festival, being an NTS graduate, I think helped, and then having this one gig on the newsroom, I ended up signing with ETM in September 1996, and I've been with them ever since.
That's good. And after that gig and the theater gig, was it kind of a relentless stream of gigs, or did you have long breaks?
No, it was a total bomb. I got an agent. I came to Toronto, and I was like, okay, I've done this TV show, The Newsroom, that people seem to have heard about, and it was season 1, so there was kind of a lot of buzz around it. And I didn't have a huge part in it, but I was kind of featured in this one episode. And I just done a play, a collective, with the guy, one of the guys who helped found in the early days of Theatre Passe Muraille. I thought,
I'm set.
Doors open, I have arrived. And my whole career has basically been trying to catch myself to not fall into that trap again. And to try to find a way to be patient with the fact that it's not a career that goes like this. It's a career that goes like that. It's the graph of the actor's career. You just hope that the bottoms don't get lower.
Right.
But really, it's a very relatively sort of size graph. And that was sort of the first time I had to teach myself or learn that lesson. And I've constantly, then in 1997, a year later, I'd done a little walk-on on Traders. I had done a pretty fun 2-episode guest star on Twitch City, where I got to meet Bruce McDonald and Don McKellar and Molly Parker and Daniel McIver. And again, I was like, I'm here. When am I in your next movie?
Working with these amazing Canadian talent.
Amazing people. And then I got this film in 1997 called Extraordinary Visitor, which was with Mary Walsh and Andy Jones. And I played John the Baptist in it. And that was like a 30-day shoot, and I was the extraordinary visitor. So again, I had this experience where that film ended. It was in TIFF. I had an industry pass. I was like the guy. I was like, okay, well, you do one of these, and then you do the Bourne Ultimatum, right? Like that's kind of how it works. You're like the lead in a small Canadian film, and then you get some enormous agent in the U.S., and then you're like wildly famous, and you're turning down movie offers all the time, right? And, again, it was kind of like, okay. And then 2003, I got cast in, I've done more TV, I've done more movies and bits. 2003, I get cast in this really weird improvised TV show called Train 48 for Global. We do that for 2.5 years. Together, we do 318 half hours. You're on TV, it's sort of like a soap, so you're almost on TV every night. You become more recognized, people know you in public. And that ends, and you're like, okay, so like, when does the network approach me with like my TV series? And then you're like, right, it's that thing, And all I can really say is that I, besides being, incredibly famous, well-respected, and enormously wealthy, which are, I think everyone's wish, whatever the hell you're in. My goal was to try to make a living as a performer. Mm-hmm. And then the next goal was, with my wife who's an actor, can we support our family as performers? And so far, I have been able to do that with some pretty touch and go years and pretty touch and go days. But, as a performer, whether it be music, theater, film, television, a little bit of voice, that's always been my goal. I sort of trying to judge success on that scale because that's one that's quite tangible. And the thing that's funny is, as I got to know more actors who were famous, I realized that they go through the same thing, which I couldn't imagine. Like I was doing this movie called Picture Claire with Juliette Lewis. Bruce McDonald was directing it. It was going to be a big Canadian film. Gina Gershon, Mickey Rourke, Juliette Lewis, but it was Canadian. Semi had written it. Bruce was directing it.
Didn't Robert Lantos produce that?
Robert produced it. Yeah, it was going to be a big deal. So I was thrilled to get this detective part in that. It was fun. And with the late Tracy Wright as co-detectives with her, amazing. And one day I was at the craft table with Juliette Lewis, and I said, what are you doing this weekend? She said, well, I'm going back to LA. And I said, oh, cool. What are you going to do? Like, you going to go hang out with your husband? And she's like, yeah, but, I'm going back to look for work. And I was just like, what? Like Juliette Lewis of Cape Fear, Juliette Lewis of like Natural Born Killers, Juliette Lewis of all, like you're going to look for work? Like how? Wait, you're like basically a movie star. So what's this whole like you looking for work thing? And then as I got to know more and more actors who work a lot, I realized, okay, the scale on the graph may be different, but that experience of working, not working, up and down, you're known, you're not known, you're in a high profile, you're in a low profile, you can get auditions or you can get offers and you can't get offers. Like that's just called being an actor.
And then there's things where actors will win an award and then that will take them out of the running for jobs because it means that they can demand more money than producers are willing to pay for them and stuff. Like there's so many different
and then people
variables.
have to go through all those strategies. I mean, here we don't really do that as much because the irony here is you win a Gemini and no one really cares, but it's cumulatively they're very important things. Like cumulative, like a career in Canada is really judged not by its peaks and its lows, but by its cumulative sort of success and survival.
Yeah.
As opposed to I think in LA and in Hollywood, if you had one really good go of it, like if you had a big part on a network show and that was pretty much all you did, that was actually pretty good because there were a whole bunch of people who didn't do that.
And it means you'll do movies of the week later.
Maybe, yeah. And also in Canada though, if you had an enormous part on Material Girls, was that the name of the show?
Yeah, there's Beautiful Girls here.
Beautiful Girls. No, way older than that. I'm talking. What was the one about the people who lived? There was the great one Richard Zepier was in about the people who lived on the street. It wasn't. It's not Degrassi, but anyways.
I think in a way this is a case in point.
Yeah. If you were the number one on a big Canadian series that lasted a season,
right? That's
not the kind of thing you can sort of bank on for
absolutely not. I mean, you can be the series lead, you can win a Gemini, and then the next thing you're lucky if you're offered an actor level role in an episode of another show because
that was a show.
Hey, you're great for that part. I mean, you've got maybe 2 lines and 2 scenes in one day, and we're going to pay you scale and
I think it's
the actor hasn't worked in 8 months, so
so they're going to take it.
It's gotten more like that. Like when I talk to actors who are older than me and actors who've done a lot more than me in Canada, and like I said, some of the actors I know in Hollywood, everyone's kind of saying like, yeah, I'm kind of doing the stuff I didn't do 5 years ago, like to get by. And I think, that's sort of a sign of the times. A lot of people all around the world are trying to figure out where the money's coming from and how they're going to do their thing.
Yeah.
And, the landscape's changing a lot. I think in some ways there's a whole slew of amazing actors who used to do, $15 to $30 million Hollywood movies, like adult dramas, and now
they're doing TV now.
The only place for them to do their thing is like on a cable drama
show,
of some kind.
One of the main goals for any, I guess, North American actor is to do a tour of duty in Los Angeles. When did you do your first? And and how did you prepare yourself for that? And what's involved in that? And
it's absolutely ongoing. It's never over. Once you start, it's hard to stop. That film I did, Extraordinary Visitor, was in a tiny film festival in Los Angeles in the summer of 2000. So in August 2000, I went down. I did Rent-A-Wreck. I rented this horrible car. It was so bad, in fact, that when I got rear-ended on my last day, the woman who hit the back of my car and dented it came out and was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" And I was like, and I knew my flight was in like 3 hours, and I was like, I looked at the bumper, and it was so bashed up I couldn't tell what she'd hit because it was already scratched and crappy, and I went, and this is the land of litigation, and I was like, yeah, it's okay, go ahead, don't worry about it. And she's like, oh my God, are you sure? I mean, I'm sure she thought I was going to fall out the side dead and say, call my lawyer. So yeah, I rented a wreck, and I was down there for about 2 weeks, and that's kind of when I first dipped my toe in and thought, okay, how would you do this? How do you do this? I met a couple managers, I met a few agents, I had a few, Sandra O was down there. I knew a few actors. She was doing Arliss at the time, and so I knew a few actors down there who'd kind of got going, and then I really started again in earnest 2004. I've tested a couple times. Like I tested in the mid 2000s, and then I tested like 2 years ago for NBC comedy. So I've kind of worked. I've gone down during pilot season several of the last 7 or 8 years, like not all of them, and sometimes I've only gone down for a couple weeks and then I've got work back here, or I've gone down for a couple weeks. The other thing too is I have two writing partners, and one of them lives in LA, so sometimes if I'm down there, we'll be working on a script, and then hopefully the auditions come, because I found it a difficult place to be if you don't have anything to do. It's a difficult place to be if you're separated from your family, because it's very costly to have your family there.
Have you ever taken your family down?
Yeah, I have. When my second son was 4 weeks old, we went, because there was no way my wife was going to be on her own for that period of time. And that was actually kind of a difficult but kind of an amazing experience, like being in LA in January and walking a baby in the stroller. You're like, yeah, this is awesome. But it was so expensive to live in a house and have your rental car and all that. But it's funny, that was the last time I tested. So in a way, I didn't have a zillion auditions, but I got between me and like one or two other guys for like a big NBC pilot that ended up going to series.
Ooh.
So in a way, you kind of go like, oh yeah, this is kind of how it works. You just never kind of know. And
but once you've tested for something like that experience alone is a significant part in an actor's life in LA. Because if you've never tested, you don't know what it is.
At the same time, you'll run into.
But if you've gone through the testing process.
But at the same time, you run into a 17-year-old blonde girl who's beautiful and who can act, who's like tested 11 times that season. So it's also relative.
But they now have a quote, and there is a significant stock in being in that position when it comes to series regulars on any show, Canadian or otherwise, because you actually have proof that there's been a negotiated rate, there's been something that has been put in place, and you now have a value, even though you've never booked it.
But I think that was more the case before. I think now, because so many Canadians have gone down, and the thing that disheartens me a little bit is, I'll go talk to a theater school class, and some kid in the third year theater school will be like, okay, do I move to New York or Los Angeles? And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, do I move to New York or Los Angeles? And they're like, young people now are just going like, well, if this is as good as you guys can do, like, you think I'm going to stick around this joint? And it's too bad, because, it is this, of course the world's getting smaller, the market is getting more global, but I worry that, if everyone starting out runs to LA, two things will happen. A vast majority of them will never become actors, because they'll go and run the lottery there and they'll lose. And also, it sets up this thing where a 19-year-old kid is going to have to go to LA to get cast in this, like a medium-sized, small-time part in Toronto or in Canada. And I'm just worried that it sets up a thing where people won't get the experience to get any good. And if there's one thing the reputation of Canadian actors generally have, they think Canadian actors are ugly, they think Canadian actors aren't star power, they think Canadian actors aren't sexy enough, the Australians can do all that stuff, but one thing they think Canadian actors can do is that we know how to act.
Yeah, Canadian actors have the benefit of having we are considered just well-trained performers.
And also,
more so than the Americans.
What I say to them is like, if you're someone like me going to LA, I have an agent there, I have a manager, I have work visa and all that. Like, if I go there now at 38, it's like they sort of look and go, well, if you're an actor who's worked this much in Canada and survived, you got to be good, because, and then they look at your demo reel and they see, oh, there's a comedy, there's a drama, there's a genre piece, there's
Chris Plummer.
Yeah,
and you guest star on the American things that shoot here.
Yeah.
And suddenly they have recognizable,
When I was when I was testing once for my down there, I said to my manager, I said, "Oh man, I'd really love to get this job. Finally I'd get one of these cool pilots. It'd be great." And I said, I just, I look at my resume and I worry. I've got all this Canadian stuff, and they don't know a lot of stuff in my resume, and I just don't know if I have enough experience. And he just looked at me and said, they cast people in pilots who've never been on camera before. So don't worry about that part. It's about, is it the right person for this role at this time, and all the other factors that come into it. You don't have to worry about not having enough experience. You might have to worry about not being enough of a name or not being enough of a star, but don't worry about, I don't know if this guy can act, because that's not the issue anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's some comfort in having done this now for 16, 17 years, is that of course I can get better. It doesn't mean every part I do I'm great at, not at all. There's challenges all the time. But in terms of feeling ready, I crossed a point probably 7 years ago where I was basically okay, I was if my agent called me tomorrow and said, okay, you're in a movie with Ryan Gosling and Al Pacino tomorrow, I'd be like, yep, let's go, I'm good. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like that when you're starting out. It can't be. You can't, you have to get experience behind you. So yeah, I keep trying down there and trying to balance it with all those factors of, how much can I afford to be there? How much time do I want to be away from my kids? How much time am I there writing? How much money can I spend? How are the auditions going? Do I have, because to me the issue down there more has become about just trying to get access to auditions. And do you have enough behind you that minute? I've sat in casting offices. I was in one, and this woman who was the assistant it was ring, 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 hello? Yes. No, I told you, I'm not looking at, don't email me their headshot. I don't want to see. Okay. What have they been on? No, recently. Okay. The Good Wife? Okay. When? In the last 6 months? Okay. I'll see what I can do. And you realize, it was so much about, who is this person, and what have they done, yesterday that's going to make me put them in the
what have you done for me lately?
Yeah. And I get that, but that's, we don't, it's not to the same degree here, because it just doesn't work that way here. You can't, our market is a bit smaller, but again, I can't imagine what it's like for a 19-year-old actor trying to start off in Toronto now, compared to what it was like for me. I think it was hard, and I think now, there's so many more of them.
Did you ever do commercials when you started out?
I went to probably 10 commercial auditions that took forever. And listen, we're talking 1990s, man, late 1990s, mid 1990s. My face was not selling toothpaste. There was no there was no place for me. And I got so frustrated that after those 10, I went to my agent and I said, listen, I'm not going to book any of these, and I don't feel good doing them. But that being said, I've done voiceover. It's not like I have a deep objection to commercials. It's just that at that time, there was no way I was going to get any of them. Mm-hmm. And I didn't enjoy it that much. Yeah. But they're pretty important to the actor's life. And I don't know if you could be an actor in Los Angeles and not audition for commercials, because you'd have to be pretty steadily financed to do that. So, but yeah, I haven't really been down there long enough to get wrapped up in that stuff.
And then how much time do you find available to you to work on other projects, either your own theater or film projects or music, or how does it break down? I guess it changes depending on what people offer you, but you always seem to have things coming down the pipe. I mean, you always have ideas in the works. And
yeah, I've just found the devil's work is in idle hands. For me, I never really am still for that long when it comes to having stuff to do. I never really sit down and go oh, I got nothing to do. Never, ever, ever. It's always I don't feel like doing that. I'm not going to do that. But I mean, I just have found for me that I like having a lot of variety. And so it's good to switch from things. Like I go crazy if it's just like trying to sniff out every production that's shooting in Toronto and figuring out why I'm not on them. Like I can only do that up to a certain point before I'm like, this is going to drive me insane. And then like if I'm in a play for like 6 months and I can't audition for any TV and film, I go crazy. Mm-hmm. And so I just try to, again, if I talk to students, I say, when you're a theater student and you're in school and you're training, it's like 100% of your time is like learning to be, you basically spend 100% of your time acting, or like 4% sleeping, 5% eating, and then like 91% acting. And I what I've realized over the years is that I spend like at least 80% of my time, at least 80, trying to be able to perform. I'm not talking about being on television. I'm like being, whether it be my own music stuff, my own theater stuff, someone else's theater stuff, or on camera. At least 80% of my time is spent trying to do my thing for 20% of the time. And that's a tough equation to wrap your head around. And that's the part, I think, that is all of our Achilles heel. Because if when you started out, someone said, you're going to have to work 80% of the... And not like, I'm going to hang out for the 80%. No, like 80% of your working, thinking, let's make this happen, hustle time, equals 20% of doing the thing you love and that you actually want to do.
Yeah.
That's a pretty raw deal.
That is.
I think... But that's, to me, like a very realistic comparison. Now, if you were talking about film and TV and the actual amount of time you actually spend acting in film and TV, it's probably 5%. It's probably 95% auditioning, reading scripts, bugging your agent, sniffing around, trying to find out what's going on.
And then if you get the job, there's all the trailer time.
Yeah, the actual acting time is 5% of your life.
Yeah. Because
you got 5 lines here, 10 lines here. Even if you have the lead in the movie, it's 25 days out of the year. Yeah. So that's an important part to try to start to wrap your head around, because I think that's the hardest part. I mean, everyone talks about rejection being the hardest part. That is hard, but you can get used to it, because it's not like you're going out on a date with someone at every audition and getting rejected. Like, you walk in, you do your thing, you kind of offer it up. Sometimes you really want to get it, sometimes you don't care, whatever, but you get it or you don't get it, and then you move on to the next one.
Yeah.
What I love in Los Angeles is a lot of the time the decisions happen fast, so I find it easy to let things go. Canada takes so long sometimes for things to cast. You'll be asking your agent, hey, you remember that thing I auditioned for 4 months ago? Have you heard anything about it? And really the answer you expect is like, no, it's long cast. Like, go on IMDb, your buddy got it. But sometimes it'll be like, no, you're still in the running. And you're just like, no, you don't even care about it.
Or they've just got the funding back.
Yeah,
it's good. It's up again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap.
I think so too. In fact, I'll freestyle first, and then if you could do a couple of verses. I think this is a great time to rap. Sorry.
I think that should never be spoken again.
We'll cut that out.
No,
we're doing it live.
We're doing it live.
All right.
Nothing gets cut.
Raoul?
Thanks,
pleasure.
guys. I hope
Do you have anything, because I like to think that I'm hosting the Tonight Show here, do you have anything to plug for January? You doing anything? Go for it.
January 18th at the El Macombo, I'm doing my second in a series there called Legends of the El Macombo.
Oh.
Where we're bringing back various legendary Toronto blues performers of the Yonge Street, Yorkville, and El Macombo scene.
Phenomenal. Who have you got?
Well, we did the last one we did with Danny Marks.
Yeah.
And I'm working on a guest for this one. I can't reveal yet.
Okay. It's exciting.
So we tried to find some of the people who were on the scene back in those
What's
days.
the date on that?
Friday, January 18th.
Okay.
And this is at a slowly revitalized and rebuilding El Macombo.
Yes.
Which has been really cool.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, it's had like moments where they were going to shut it down and it was going to close, and
And then they
it's
made
amazing
it
that
look
they
like
don't let it
the
happen.
inside of a car garage, and now I think they're changing it back to something more
to what it used to be.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And there's a lot of exciting things going on around there. And then I'm hosting on January 21st at Kerner Hall. I'm hosting the 2013 Maple Blues Awards. which are Canada's national blues
I
awards.
think I read about that in the SOCAN newsletter. I
There
think.
you go.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
My name in bold.
Yeah, it's true. They did. They bolded it.
So yeah, those are the two things I've got. And then if anyone's in Los Angeles, I'm playing at Cafe Boogaloo, which is in Hermosa Beach, California, with a real legendary lineup of guys I get to play with down there.
Who's that?
Junior Watson, Richard Innes, and Fred Kaplan, who
Nice.
were guys in the blues, great mature masters.
Now,
That's January 26th.
so is that going to be part of your tour of duty down in Los Angeles for this year? Are you tying that in, or are you just going down there to play?
No. I do a show at the Boogaloo kind of every pilot season.
Yeah.
If I can. I have my visa and stuff, so I go down and I just do this club date. And it's really great there because there's so many legendary, incredible performers in the Los Angeles area. I love playing with my band, but in that situation I can't play with my band. But the band, like the guys I played with earlier this year when I did the show there, I looked around on stage when I was playing and I was like, wow, every one of those guys I had on record before I ever met them or play with them live. So when you get,
amazing.
you're like, you're all in my CD collection from 10 years ago, and now I'm doing a gig with you. This is so cool. So
You're on my fantasy team.
Yeah, so those are and then, I'm doing my Hamlet solo show I tour with. I have some of that coming up in April. I'll be going to the Globe Theatre in Regina. And, hopefully I'll get some exciting TV and film work. But, we just cross our fingers in that department.
Thanks so much, Raoul.
Yeah,
It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to do our little closeout.
Sure.
Thanks.
Ryan, it was a pleasure to get back into this with you.
James, it was awesome to see you again.
Yes.
I think we should do this again. Maybe even
Tomorrow. Okay.
This is Cast This. I'm Ryan Goldhart.
I'm James Scott.
And
We'll see you later.
see you later.
In today's world, people are busy and impatient. We are on information overload. Every minute counts. People want to know what you can do for them. They won't spend time reading or searching, but they will watch a video. If it clearly explains who you are and what you do and tells them what they want to hear, they will reach out to you. You have seconds to get people's attention. You want a video that is engaging and makes the viewer feel as though it is speaking directly to their needs. Add to your sales team a short video and let it do the heavy selling for you. Or add to your social media or wherever your audience is spending their time. Videos can pay back your investment 10 times over. So now that you've heard our message, let's talk about yours. Let's bring your image to life.